Welcome to today's webinar, CSFP Caseload Management Tips. My name is Janelle Walker, and I will be the moderator today. Before we get started, I want to point out a few features of the webinar environment that we're using today. In the top right, we have a PDF of today's webinar. If you would like, you can download a copy for future reference. At the bottom of your screen, below the slide deck, you will see a Q&A box. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can enter them here while it's fresh on your mind. Today we'll have 3 presenters, and we will answer questions after all 3 presenters speak. We will not take questions over the phone, but we will try to get to as many questions as possible. You are also welcome to follow up with us via email. So before I introduce our speakers, I would like to see who we have on the line. Our first polling question is a demographic question, so please fill in the blank. I work for a state agency, local agency, the USDA, or other. So if you haven't submitted your answer already, go ahead and select your answer. Well, so far it looks like 41% of our participants today work for a local agency, so welcome. Our second question, we would like for you to rate your knowledge level regarding caseload management. So if you haven't submitted your answer already, go ahead and submit your response. Well, so far it looks like almost 50% has rated their knowledge as a little in terms of caseload management. Our last polling question before we turn it over to the presenters, we would like to know, in my current position, I am responsible for managing my agency's monthly CSFP participation levels. Go ahead and submit your answers if you haven't already done so. Well, it looks like about 65% of today's participants are in charge of managing their agency's monthly CSFP participation levels. Thank you so much for submitting your responses and giving us an opportunity to see who's on today's line. So now that we are done with our 3 polling questions, I'm going to go ahead and present our speakers for today. Today we have Carolyn Smolkowski. She's a program analyst at the USDA Food and Nutrition Service Food Distribution Division. We have Matt McElhaney from the Texas Department of Agriculture. And we have Shelley Parks from Jacobs and Cushman San Diego Food Bank. So Carolyn, go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thanks so much, Janelle, and thanks everyone for joining us today. As soon as this loads, I will move on to the next slide. So today we'll be discussing caseload and the caseload allocation process, just to give you a brief overview. Then I will discuss some general caseload management best practices, and I'll hand it over to Matt and Shelley, who will talk about best practices applicable for states and local agencies, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. So caseload and the caseload allocation process. So I will outline what caseload is, the caseload allocation process, and why active monitoring of CSFP participation and full caseload utilization is important. So first off, what is caseload? So caseload is a term in our CSFP regulations. It means the total number of people that may be served a CSFP food package on an average monthly basis, and that's on a calendar year basis, so from January 1st through December 31st. Now, caseload levels are set each year. First, we do it at the national level, then for individual states and Indian tribal organizations. So the national caseload level is determined by the amount of funding appropriated by Congress. So once Congress passes the Agriculture Appropriations Bill, we here at the USDA Food and Nutrition Service calculate the number of caseload slots that we can support nationally based on the funding level provided by Congress as well as other factors. So if we don't yet have full year funding, so far this year is the case. We're under what's known as a continuing resolution, which is short-term funding. So we'll issue, say by January 1st, we don't have a full year funding bill, we'll issue tentative caseload, which uses our best estimate of what final funding levels will be. So we recommend that states and ITOs treat tentative caseload levels as if they are final when you do receive caseload increases or decreases from one year to the next. Once we do receive full year funding, we'll issue final caseload. So as an example, this year's final national caseload level is 728,552 slots. So how is caseload allocated anyway? So we break up caseload into what's known as base caseload and then additional caseload. So the first step in the caseload allocation process is to determine base caseload for currently participating states and Indian tribal organizations, should resources support it. So base caseload reflects prior year participation and is determined by a formula that we have in our program regulations. The second step in the allocation process is if base caseload for all states equals less than the total caseload available nationally, we'll consider additional caseload requests, and then again from just currently participating states. And we'll assign additional caseload slots to states that show that they can serve more participants efficiently. So for example, they've demonstrated that they're able to serve 100% or close to 100% of their caseload on an average monthly basis. States that submit a request, states need to submit a request for additional caseload in order to be considered. And each state's eligibility for additional caseload is determined by a formula, again, in our program regulations. So once we determine whether or not a state is eligible, there is no regulatory formula for how we determine how much additional caseload a state should get, but usually we'll fair share the additional caseload we provide to each state based on their current caseload and then also on their additional caseload request. Now the third step is if base caseload plus additional caseload equals less than the total caseload available nationally, that's when we'll consider caseload requests from new states. And then after that, the fourth or last step is to then just assign the caseload. So one thing that's important to note is caseload availability is dependent on program funding. Typically, we aren't able to meet states' full additional caseload requests, and only will we add new states if Congress provides additional funding specifically for this purpose. However, in recent years, we've been able to have resources available to add new states. Okay, so why is caseload management important? Well, CSFP, as you may know, is a discretionary program, so that means we have limited resources. And because resources are limited, state agencies are required to ensure that program participation does not exceed the state's caseload allocation on an average monthly basis, and that's in our program regulations. However, using less caseload than what's assigned means that food resources could be going unused when there are seniors needing food assistance. So that's where active monitoring of participation and caseload utilization comes in. So CSFP state agencies must proactively monitor participation and caseload usage rates on an average monthly basis and ensure that participation does not exceed assigned caseload, again, on an average monthly basis. So you may be familiar with the FNS 153 report. That's the monthly report of the Commodity Supplemental Food Program and quarterly administrative financial status report. And that contains the reported data necessary to monitor participation use each month. State agencies should also use other electronic means, such as commonly available off-the-shelf spreadsheet software like Microsoft Excel or another program, which can help proactively and promptly identify any caseload issues. So this slide shows how our national caseload compares to our total average monthly participation each fiscal year. So as you can see, our actual participation levels have often trailed slightly under national caseload. But what we want to see is average monthly participation right at the level of our national caseload each year. So as I mentioned earlier, it's in the program's best interest to have a high caseload utilization rate. And this demonstrates that program resources are being fully and effectively utilized. We think it's important that local agencies regularly communicate with your states, and states regularly communicate with your FNS regional offices if you see any caseload utilization issues arising, so you can troubleshoot before the end of the year. So this year, similar to years prior, we conducted an updated eligibility analysis for CSFP in each state to look at the number of seniors 60 years and older that have incomes at 130% of the poverty line. We compared U.S. Census data with state-level coverage rates using National Data Bank participation data and also survey data from the American Community Survey to look at the number of seniors 60 and over with incomes at or below 130% of poverty. So our analysis found that as of 2017, participation in CSFP only accounted for just over 5% of estimated eligible seniors nationwide, and our national caseload levels accounted for just over 6%. So what that means is about 95% of estimated eligible seniors across the country are not receiving program benefits. So even in the states with the highest coverage rates, they only reach fewer than a quarter of potentially eligible seniors. Most CSFP states only covered fewer than 10% of eligible seniors. So since there's still many seniors who are eligible for CSFP nationwide, states and local agencies should try to work together to take steps to increase participation rates to meet assigned caseloads by looking at different outreach efforts, coordinating with other local agencies or other states, and focusing resources in areas with the highest density of eligible seniors if you aren't doing so already. And we'll provide some more key tips for doing so later in the webinar. So on to caseload management best practices. I'm going to briefly touch on a few of them, many of which you can find in our policy memorandum FD099, questions and answers about waiting lists and available flexibilities in caseload management. That's a good resource where you can find a lot of these best practices that I'll cover. Now, the FNS regional offices and also your neighboring CSFP states are great resources for sharing some of these best practices, and our guest speakers will provide further detail on some of these and other practices later. So a few best practices include use of waiting lists, communication between state and local agencies, early distributions, use of proxies, no-show policies, in-state caseload adjustments, and CSFP Outreach Initiatives. So waiting lists. So to fully use caseload and serve as many food packages as you're authorized, the state agency may permit that its local agencies provide temporary CSFP benefits to participants on waiting lists. So if you're certifying a participant for only one or 2 months, the local agency can provide the participant notification of placement back on the waiting list after serving a food box for that month. And if states permit a local agency to provide CSFP benefits this way, they can help maximize caseload use each month. So communication is also critical for ensuring that participants know where and when scheduled distributions will take place. And this includes for home deliveries with homebound seniors. So the local agency is required to inform the new participant of the time, the location, and also the means of food distribution, as well as their length of certification period. it's important to proactively and frequently communicate with CSFP participants in any means possible. And this can help provide clear expectations to participants up front and address challenges with any food package pickups, prevent customer service complaints, and ultimately help ensure full caseload use. Now, some of you have dealt with flooding or hurricanes or various disasters or situations outside of your control that have forced you to close a distribution site. So what we encourage is, to the extent feasible, local agencies should try to distribute CSFP food packages early in the month. That way, if things happen beyond your control, you can make alternate arrangements and reschedule distributions later in the month, since retroactive distributions are not allowed. Another thing I wanted to touch on is proxy use. So state agencies may permit their local agencies to use proxies during both certification and recertification, as well as during food package distributions. So a proxy is any person or persons designated by the participant or by the caretaker of the participant to obtain supplemental foods on their behalf. So allowing the use of proxies in the program can significantly reduce barriers to participation in the program, particularly for eligible homebound seniors and other qualified individuals who have limited mobility. For no-show policies, states may also institute these policies or permit their local agencies to do so. So in some states, after a participant misses 2 or 3 consecutive distributions, that individual is then discontinued from the program as long as they receive 15 days written notice prior to the effective date. And that's consistent with our program regulations. This enables the local agency to better serve individuals who are on the waiting list. So states can also adjust their local agencies' caseload and administrative funding allocations periodically. It doesn't necessarily just have to happen once a year. It can be quarterly or at any period that the state agrees with the local agency, as long as they communicate their expectations up front. This can help ensure that program participants currently being served by the local agency or agencies are not discontinued from CSFP due to the performance adjustments. And lastly, I just wanted to touch on CSP Outreach Initiatives. So another best practice is interagency and cross-program collaboration. This can help conduct outreach that will increase CSFP participation. And this is particularly applicable in states that receive expansions or newer states or just states struggling in general to hit caseload levels. So one example could be to identify low-income senior SNAP participants or food stamp participants who are potentially interested in the program and sending them an outreach flyer with information about CSFP. You could also collaborate with programs like the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program, where potentially eligible seniors may be drawn by the idea that they can supplement their food benefits with those of another program. So I'm going to pass it back to Janelle.
Well, thank you, Carolyn, for laying the foundation about CSFP caseload management and the caseload allocation process. So before we transition to our second speaker, I just want to remind everyone, if you have any questions, please submit them using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You can also download a copy of today's presentation by clicking the link in the box in the top right corner of your screen. As I mentioned in my introduction, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to YouTube. I will send a link to the webinar to all participants as soon as it is available. So let's go ahead and turn it over to our second presenter today, Matt McElney, from the Texas Department of Agriculture. He's going to talk more about CSFP caseload management best practices for state agencies. Take it away.
Thanks, Janelle. The Texas Department of Agriculture as well as our local agencies. You know, we heavily value CSFP for the purpose it serves and provides to the low-income senior population within our state. Since caseload is literally defined and tied to represent the number of people that can participate in the program, the task of managing caseload is not taken lightly. Our program mission is to expand this program statewide, and with the invaluable partnership developed with our local agencies, we all strive to make this an achievable goal. I hope the following information on what Texas does as a state entity towards administering the program may provide some useful insight for the other state agencies listening in. Before we jump into particulars on how Texas manages caseload, here's some quick basic profile information to understand about our state. We currently contract directly with 12 local agencies. As you see on the slide, they are all food banks. Through those 12 local agencies, half of them have joined the program within the last 3 years. They comprise, as well as a network with over 700 other distribution sites, which would be all of the other nonprofit local agencies that each of those food banks work with. Tying back to our mission for the program, as you see, we have some work to do. We are only available in 109 out of the 254 counties in our state. So this actually gives us some drive to better and maintain our caseload performance. And in terms of our performance, the last bullet should hopefully just show basically our expansion as we are trajectorying on an upwards bounce each year on how much caseload we as a state have received. So the following are the core pieces that determine our basis for caseload expansion and the specific caseload number that we request through our state plan every year. It really starts with our application plan of operation that our local agency food banks submit to us every year. It is something that we have within our automated system where they provide us all of the pertinent information regarding how much caseload they feel they can effectively use for the upcoming program year. They also tell us the number of applicants that they have on their waiting list. These numbers truly are basically the basis for what we provide into our state plan that comprise of what we request. If we have a local agency that we may work with through TFAP, we run through the same agencies through our TFAP program, and we always have conversations and communications with them, particularly the ones that haven't quite set up or signed up for CSFP yet. In the event that we do have a local agency that has vast interest in starting up in CSFP, that obviously helps us towards our mission in the program. And so we want to incorporate them and expand CSFP to a whole brand new area. We try to, as a state, set a minimum starting point as long as the local agency can comply with it. We currently set it at a mark at about 2,000. A lot of that is due to logistical reasons in regards to how we order, since the vast majority of what we bring into the state is ordered through direct delivery shipment. But we also think 2,000 is just a good starting number for any given area in our state to try to provide CSFP service into their local area. We would start off with that 2,000 in a brand new area, but realistically what happens is as we give those local agencies time to get the program going, we may tell our existing local agencies that have had substantial caseload and have folks on the waiting list to take on a little bit more in that time. So we may actually double up and give and assign some of that caseload over to some of our existing agencies to help pick up the slack while the brand new areas are just starting up on the program. in terms of actual practices that Texas employs for caseload management, I honestly don't think we do anything of an innovative or an extraordinary nature. What we do is that we take full advantages of the allowances, policies, and regulations and guidance that USDA provides through the Code of Federal Regulations and the program memorandums. A lot of this is actually the same things that Carolyn was mentioning previously that we just simply employ. We do follow that FD 099 guide, the memorandum, and we will fully have our local agencies and allow them to employ a 1-month certification period. This is actually probably one of the core things of how caseload management could be completely utilized, is the notion that whenever you have one local agency that might have a little bit of challenge in distributing their caseload for a given month, that shouldn't make or break your performance. You just simply need, as long as you have your communication channels intact, be able to communicate that out to other local agencies to say, hey, some of our partners are having a little bit of trouble this month for whatever reason. Is there a way that you can go and dip into your waiting list and see if you can incorporate X number of caseload on top of what you actually do? This will give folks on the waiting list, a little bit of a temporary benefit, but that 1-month certification allowability is definitely something we at Texas utilize. I have something on here called advanced issuance, and what that basically means is USDA also allows states the ability to distribute 2 CSFP food packages any month. One for the month of that they're there to receive the food benefit for, and for the following month, not retroactive. And so what we allow some of our local agencies to use as a strategy is, especially in months such as now in the winter, it might be harder for participants to get out and about, or they may forego receiving a CSFP food package because maybe they're being taken care of adequately for their families. Whatever that be the case, usually weather is a big factor to decrease caseload around this time. The local agencies may decide to do advanced issuance, where in the months of September and October and even November, they may go ahead and incorporate and give a participant 2 of their food packages, so that helps shore up the caseload performance that you're going to have each and every month for your state. As also mentioned by Carolyn earlier, we do those in-state caseload adjustments. Now, ours are typically done at a point in time where we are bringing on a brand new local agency who's starting up CSFP in a new area. Or if we just have a case where a CE is just, for whatever reason, not quite performing up to the caseload that we assigned them. We just simply go and ask and seek other local agencies if they can help pick up the slack. And so we will do a rather quote-unquote soft caseload adjustment at that point in time. We don't literally remove the caseload from the local agency that may be underperforming, but we'll just simply ask another one to take up that slack and then keep constant communication with and provide guidance to the one that may need a little bit of help to get them back on track. In Texas, we do also have a local agency no-show policy that's set currently at 2 months of missed distribution. So if a participant does miss 2 consecutive months, they are then no longer eligible for the program. They can certainly reapply, and when they do so, they will be placed at the back of the waiting list in that particular local agency's area. But sometimes it's a needed measure if you've got a substantial number of participants who do this action. For whatever reason, they're not able to pick up those food packages. It just helps keep caseload maintenance available and proper, and allowing those local agencies to get into their waiting list when you have participants that are missing consecutive months of distribution. And the last bullet just shows that one of our biggest targets is, when it comes to requesting for additional caseload, USDA will look at an annual average, a final quarter average, or in some years, the month of September alone. Each and every year, typically, you're looking at either making your annual average or your final quarter average. If you recall in the slide I showed earlier about our state load expansion, sometimes we doubled our caseload or got a quantity that is of a substantial number to where, once we get that notification in January, the first quarter of the program year is pretty much already shot, and so that also means our annual average is going to automatically get us below that threshold. So a lot of times, we will take advantage of that allowability that USDA provides, and we concentrate on making sure that at least for the final quarter, that would be July through September, that we definitely make at least the 95% mark so that we can be eligible to request additional caseload, or hit the 100% mark so that we don't reduce any of our base caseload for the following program year. In Texas, we certainly understand that we are the middle cog in the wheel that keeps the program operating. As our local agency representative will attest in her part of the presentation, it's actually the local agencies are the true purveyors of the integrity of the program, and certainly the side of the operation that has the most say when it comes to caseload performance. The following are simply strategies that we utilize to assist the ones that actually get the job done. And so I think a lot of these it's not rocket science. Like an employee would hope to have with their employer, with our local agencies, we hope that we have provided them an adequate open door policy to where if they are experiencing anything, any type of hiccup or challenges with maintaining their caseload assignment, we want to have that discussion with them. We want to know and understand what they're going through. And a lot of times, we at the state level don't fully comprehend or could provide the full answer for them. And so we have that active network where we employ the use and assistance of all of the other local agencies to kind of step in and say, hey, is there any tip or suggestion that you could provide to them to help them get them back on track? A lot of things we do is a soft transition in terms of our caseload management and our assignment. And so when I say give local agencies a chance to a certain point, I actually really mean it. We've got some entities that are in their second year, and if they're still struggling with that caseload, we're still keeping that base caseload for them intact and assigned to them, because the ever-growing hope is that they are going to expand up to that number. Because it's very hard once you give a local agency a particular number to reach, it'll be very difficult to simply just remove that away, because the word has already gotten out about the program, and they're going to have participants or people come in and sign up all before you know it. And so that certain point is met to where you just, through the constant communication and rapport that you have with your agencies, just making sure what is that tipping point to say, okay, at this point, this is the maximum amount of caseload we think you, month in, month out, are going to be reaching. It's at that point in time where we may have that discussion to say, have you thought about becoming maybe a satellite agency for one of our other local agencies and combine your caseload together to comprise of one? Or are you willing to take this less amount because you haven't been able to meet the amount of assignment, because, as a state, we have to make sure that we maintain that level. And so again, we truly utilize a lot of the 1-month certification, the advanced issuance, and all of those things that we employ to, keep our caseload numbers going month in, month out. Caseload performance and your food orders should directly tie in. And so as a little bit of a profile on how we do our ordering, we do all of our ordering on behalf of our local agencies, really just based on how we have our caseload stretched out among the 12. We've got pockets of areas with high caseload numbers that are mixed in with some areas that have a lower number of caseload. And so to coordinate all of those trucks that we order, it's just best left easier that the state handles and maintains. 98% of the orders that we bring in are direct delivery. And we order everything but one item through the program, and that's just basically on a logistical piece. Everything else we bring in as a variety. I think all of these things that if a state controls through its food ordering also helps with the caseload performance of the agencies, because they're able to provide a variety each and every month of their food package to those participants to keep them coming. And the last bit is just finally some just basic pointers on what we do. You know, as I was saying earlier, we definitely keep an active network. We definitely want all of our local agencies to have a constant rapport with each other, whether they are setting up the program for the first time or have been seasoned vets through it. At any point in time, you know, they may have some challenges that, you know, really truly only they will know. And so while we can be a conduit at the state level and hear some of these challenges, we try to keep it at the local agency where we say, look, can you help us work with them and give them the pointers they need to keep their caseload going. Through our system, you know, we provide all of the necessary forms, the handbook, the policies, the guidelines, and so some of the outreach material we provide as resources for our local agency. If you stick to your mission or your vision, I think you can't go wrong with helping that formulate year in, year out how you're going to approach and tackle the caseload that you've been assigned by USDA. It certainly drives us, again, because we have so many more seniors who need this program, and we don't have it throughout the state, and so that in of itself is a huge drive as to how month in, month out we try to maintain the caseload that we have been assigned. And finally, again, you know, the local agency, you know, they basically do all the work, and so you want to definitely entrust your local agencies to do the job. I heard some states along at times, you know, go through and they say, well, you didn't perform this particular month, and so I'm going to go ahead and remove the caseload and give it to someone else on a permanent basis. And that's just a tactic in Texas we have not really employed, because we just feel what we've got is working in terms of being pretty soft at our caseload assignment, our transitioning, relying on our local agency partners that month in, month out can get the job done. And, you know, as long as they have an adequate waiting list, allowing them to tap into that to be able to, you know, perform and maintain their caseload. You know, that's pretty much it for Texas. I know you're going to get a lot of great information from Shelley regarding the local agency level, and so I will kick it back to Janelle.
Well, thanks, Matt, for providing best practices as to how the Texas Department of Agriculture manages their caseload. This is very helpful information. We've had a few questions trickle in, so remember, we're not taking questions over the phone, but you can submit your questions using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And again, if you haven't done so already, you can also download a copy of the presentation by clicking the link in the box in the right top corner of your screen. So last but not least, I would like to turn it over to Shelley Parks from Jacobs and Cushman San Diego Food Bank to talk about best practices for managing CSFP caseload at the local agency.
Thank you so much, Janelle. And I want to start by echoing what Matt said. It's really, if you operate as a state, all of your local agencies together to manage that caseload across the state is what truly works. And our state agency in California here is amazing at getting our 10 local agencies to work together. I just wanted to say this up front because the presentation I'm about to do is a sharing of all best practices across the state of California. Our state does get us together once a year to share best practices, so this is a compilation of everyone's work here in California. So I wanted to start out with the scope of service. A lot of local agencies on the phone here want to understand, are you bigger than what I'm talking about, smaller, or about the same size, so that you can see where you're coming from. So San Diego County, we are a one-county service agency here, just within the one county, but our county boasts 3.3 million people, which is more than 22 of the populations of states across the United States. So a pretty populated county with a square footage or square mileage of 4,526 square miles. So geographically pretty far. Our food bank specifically distributes 26 million pounds of food annually, serves 370,000 people monthly, with a staff of between 57 and 61 staff, depending on if it's the holiday season and we've got on some extra drivers, but with the help of 25,000 volunteers that come through our doors annually. For CSFP specifically, our caseload is 11,700 seniors every month. We do purely direct service. So I know some of you on the call are working with sub-distributing agencies where you may be assembling boxes and they're going out to your other nonprofits who do the actual distribution. But here at San Diego Food Bank, we have 4 staff members on the programs team that are doing the program side of things, signing seniors in, making sure they're eligible, and then we have 2 full-time drivers that are driving out to our 68 sites across the month. So that is the scope of where we are talking about and coming from. I know everyone varies a little bit, but that will give you background on where we're at. So when managing caseload, it's not just about the number of seniors and boxes you're distributing every month. You want to make sure that you have adequate infrastructure to build over time. So things that we have found to be hugely successful is pre-assembling our CSFP boxes. It allows us to serve upwards of 600 seniors in a matter of an hour or 2 out at a distribution in the community. So you can see there in the picture what our box looks like, and all of those items packed into the box go out into the community already pre-packed. We do use a live real-time database. We currently use Oasis Insight. Other good ones out there that we have spoken with other local agencies who are using our Link to Feed and Pantry Track. But it's really important to us to have that live real-time database so that we have the numbers of seniors that we are serving on a daily basis. And if my team is out in the community and I'm at my desk in the office, I can see if they're reaching their caseload for the day, or if they're running low, what's going on out there in a live real-time database. Having adequate staff and volunteer support, so that includes at our registration tables, packing boxes as well as distributing boxes. We need enough hands on deck to make this happen on a monthly basis, and we need those people trained. So civil rights training, but also training on our database and training on the federal regulations behind CSFP so that everyone is aware what needs to happen and what the requirements are of the program. Something we've found hugely successful in increasing our caseload over time is adding fresh produce and bread from some of our other programs in with the CSFP box. The seniors love to come out when there is that fresh component with it. The staple items are amazing to get them through the month, but they also love the fresh produce. So when we have that available, we always add that on our trucks to the CSFP sites. Each year, if we do get a caseload increase from our state and from the federal, we conduct a lot of different outreach to get out to those seniors who aren't currently on the program. We have 500 nonprofit partners that we work with. Only 68 of them are running the CSFP or hosting us for the CSFP program. So we leverage those existing pantry partners to allow us to set up in their parking lot, use their building space, and reach their existing community members with the CSFP program. We also engage in a lot of community collaboratives. There are meetings all throughout our county, and we make sure to attend those on a regular basis. Almost every staff member here at the food bank attends at least one monthly collaborative, If we need to reach a lot more seniors, we put the word out to all of our community collaboratives, and they know that we need to increase caseload and we need to reach seniors. So we can send out flyers, or we can send out email information to make sure that all the seniors not receiving our services know about the service. We also conduct physical outreach, so if there's a resource fair, a community event that's largely attended by seniors, our staff might go out to that program telling them about CSFP. On occasion, if our caseload is low, we'll also bring boxes directly out to that event. We can sign up seniors on the spot, and then we can get them enrolled and information about their local distribution site that they can attend monthly. So that's how we reach out into the community, but I think one of our biggest tips for managing our caseload is not only looking at outreach, but looking at in-reach. So we can spend our time going out to find seniors we haven't reached, but we find a lot of success in what we call in-reach. So finding those seniors that have already accessed our services and figuring out how to get them back. So right there on your screen you see a postcard we sent out last year saying we've missed you. So what we did with our database is pulled a list of our CSFP participants who we had served in the last year, but we had not seen in the last 3 months. Something happened where they stopped coming to us. We sent out this postcard and we saw a huge increase and were able to meet our caseload just by simply finding those seniors who had served us, who we had served before, but were no longer coming to us. With our database, we collect emails when available, so we can also do these postcards via email. We also do phone calls. San Francisco in the state of California uses a robocall system where they can do multiple calls at once. These phone calls are hugely effective when there's changes in the distribution days. So this month we are closed for Christmas and New Year's Eve, which does affect some of our regular distributions. They end up on a different day. So instead of maybe the 4th Tuesday of the month, they're on the 3rd Tuesday of the month. We make sure and reach out with phone calls to those seniors, reminding them of the schedule change. One thing to increase our caseload is a Bring a Friend poster that we post at our distribution sites. So when we're at caseload, at 100% caseload, we don't put the sign up, but if we're at 95% caseload and we want to reach more seniors, we put this Bring a Friend sign up at all the distribution sites. Every senior that comes to our distribution often knows another senior who they could have come along with them and also be eligible for the program. What we find among our participants is sometimes they tell us, I didn't tell anybody about the program because I thought you might not have enough boxes for me. So when we're openly communicating with our volunteers and our participants that we are under caseload and we have more boxes to give out, we let them know, they bring more seniors in, and we reach our caseload. We also track and correct patterns of low attendance. There are certain events throughout the year, things that happen that impact our caseload. An example of this is the Chinese New Year. If the Chinese New Year falls on a certain day of the month and that the population in that area where we have the distribution is largely Chinese, they may not be coming to our distribution because they have other things going on and they're very busy. So when we know that's happening, sometimes we'll schedule a makeup day for that particular site, knowing that those families can't come out to the CSFP distribution. We want to give them an alternate. We'll also make additional flyers for a site like that, really reminding people to come. So there's different things where we see patterns. We can be proactive in communication to let people know that we really need them to come and pick up their boxes. Another big thing we use is the use of proxies. So at the eligibility screening and registration process, we are asking every single senior if they want to assign somebody who's a proxy. We use Oasis Insight database, as I've mentioned. Right in that database, it allows them to issue up to 2 proxies that they can use throughout the year to pick up on their behalf when they can't come. When they first initially register, we do give them a proxy form, which you see right there on the slide. That way, if they are sending somebody who's not a proxy within our database, they can just fill out this form saying that somebody can pick up on their behalf, and we can accept that to issue the box to the senior that month that they can't make it. So proxies are huge. Our state has even opened up the opportunity for us to have a few Proxy initiative sites. What we do at a Proxy initiative site, it is typically a senior living facility where all the seniors reside in the residence. It might be 60 seniors in the place. It might be 100 seniors in the place. But what we do is our staff go out to the apartment complex and go door to door signing the seniors up for CSFP. Issue them the box that day. And then they make a apartment manager or some sort of resource person within the building their proxy. So all 60 people in that building will make that same person their proxy. That way the following month we can go out with the 60 boxes, sit down with that apartment manager, and they can actually sign for the 60 boxes. They hold those boxes in the office, and we typically give them 2 days to get them out to all the seniors within their building. So that's a way to really leverage some of our sites, leverage the proxy process, and reach our caseload with very limited staff time going out and reaching those seniors. So again, it's a huge partnership and open communication with the local and the state agency to really maintain what our caseload is and reach that caseload and strive for 100%. Thanks so much, and I'm going to toss it back to Janelle for fielding questions.
Well, Shelley, thank you so much for giving us more information about best practices for managing CSFP caseload at the local level. So we've had several questions come through during the presentation, and I want to jump right in. But before I do, I would like to turn everyone's attention to the survey questions on your screen. Please feel free to complete the survey questions while we have our presenters answer a few questions. So I'm going to go ahead and open up these poll questions, and you all can go ahead and fill them in. So our first question, it goes to Carolyn. May a proxy do the recertification for an applicant?
So the short answer is yes, but it depends on your state agency's proxy policies. So federal regulations do allow for proxy usage for both certifications and recertifications, as long as there are procedures in place that will detect and prevent fraud. Another thing you can do for recertifications is basically you can just make a phone call at the 6-month mark, verifying the individual's address and continued interest in receiving program benefits, and that they're still interested in the program. So technically speaking, at the federal level, you don't need to have the individual come in to recertify in person. So you can bypass the proxy policy that way. But again, this depends state by state. Some states may have more stringent proxy policies.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Matt, this question is for you. Are you funding allocations for your local agencies tied directly to caseload? And if so, does this change when you move caseload?
Yeah, so in effect, it kind of does. You know, what we do in Texas is it's pretty simple and straightforward, to be honest. We go off caseload percentage. Whenever we get a grant award document, because, you know, the administrative funding that we may receive through the state from USDA is piecemealed. Every time we get a grant, we take that value, and based on the caseload rate, we kind of determine how far out will that administrative funding take us. And so, for instance, if we get an amount that may last up to 3 months, what we typically do then is to determine the caseload percentage share. We do look at that performance in conjunction with what we assigned in determining to give to our financial team. This is the caseload breakup of each of our 12 local agencies, and this is all based on the performance that they've done to come up with that percentage share that we apply against the grant award amount that we receive.
All right, thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Matt. So our next question is for Shelley. Do you use a first-come, first-served distribution?
Yes, all of our distributions are on a first-come, first-served basis. At some of our larger sites, we do go out 30 minutes or 60 minutes before the distribution and hand out numbers because we are serving a lot of seniors and they need to sit down, maybe go back to their car, so we do hand out numbers, but it is first-come, first-served.
Okay. And another question that our listeners had is about this database. Could you tell us a little bit more about it? What type of database is it? How does it work? And is it something that could be shared with other states?
Yes, absolutely. So previous to our current database, we were on a software-based database. So after our distributions, all of our staff would have to come back to the office, plug in, upload all the information. So it wasn't live and it wasn't cloud-based. In 2015, we switched over to Oasis Insight. It is a software provided by Simon Solutions, and we have actually worked with them to custom build everything that we needed for CSFP. At the time, it was we were required to check the income levels of the seniors and all of that documentation. Since then, we have become self-certified income. So we've changed the database over time, and this software company has been amazing at customizing things as the state or federal regulation changes. The brilliance of this database and why we went with this is it has barcode scanning availability. So, you know, just like when you go to a grocery store, that red little barcode scanner gun, we use that. And each senior is issued a card that's laminated and has a barcode on it. And then we also have a barcode whether they're issued one box or two boxes. So if a senior were picking up for himself and his wife, he would maybe be issued two boxes. What that allows us to do is really leverage our volunteers. So our volunteers at our site are able to issue boxes with this simple barcode scanning, and then our staff are just purely on recertifications and new clients. So they're able to process that part of it. Our volunteers can issue boxes really quickly, and any senior that walks up to our distribution can be served in 20 minutes or less. It makes it a really great, dignified experience for the seniors coming to our distribution.
Well, thank you, Shelley. And if you wouldn't mind, could you repeat the name of the software one more time?
Yes, it is called Oasis Insight, and it's through Simon Solutions. They will go on with you, and before we adopted this particular software, we did demos with a few different softwares that were available, so they do have a demonstration that you can do. If you also want to connect with me offline, I can share my screen with you and kind of walk you through what that looks like. So we're happy to kind of share what we are using here at San Diego for anyone else who wants to check it out across the nation.
Well, thank you, Shelley. Well, for the sake of time, unfortunately, we will not be able to answer any more questions, but I do encourage you, if you have a burning question that you want an answer to, please email us at usdafoods@fns.usda.gov. I want to thank our presenters for providing best practices on CSFP caseload management, and I want to thank all of you for joining us today. Now, this webinar was recorded, and we will send all participants an email when it is available on YouTube. So again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can email us at usdafoods@fns.usda.gov. That's all for today.